The story begins in the center of a school. Below, we can see a large explosion. One of the students is thrown straight to the ground after this fireball. The others approach, saying, "Oops, my bad. It looks like I didn't even see you there, peasant." They continue mocking him, who has just been hit by an elemental magic. This is amazing for them. The arrogant student gets up, asking if that still wasn't enough. He demands that they return what they promised, since he brought exactly what they asked for. Then the group leader explains with a cunning look that he brought the famous fresh loin burger, a delicacy sold in only 50 units per day, enough to feed the whole class. Despite this, the group looks at him with disdain, questioning where the drink was. They say he should have been more attentive. As punishment, one of the bullies creates a fireball in his hands and throws it at the face of our protagonist, who explodes again. The people around comment that it was to be expected. After all, that boy is completely weak. At that moment, a girl with a serious expression approaches, asking what they are doing. The bullies are startled to see that it is Shino, a member of the academy's disciplinary committee. Even so, one of them throws his cell phone in the protagonist's face, which falls to the ground with the screen cracked, causing more pain. Meanwhile, Shinon runs toward him, calling him by name Haruto, and asking if he's okay. He, in turn, asks her to stop, warning that she could end up excluded by the other classmates. She replies that she doesn't care about that, as she is worried about him. Haruto wipes his face and asserts that they cannot survive in this place. He explains that if they continue going out together like they used to, people might start picking on her too. He then walks away. She calls out to him, but he continues on his path. Meanwhile, the sky above the academy is filled with clouds. Inside the building, a group of people whispers about him, saying it's that boy, the special admission student, but he has no magical abilities. They speculate on how he managed to get into such a prestigious school, and so the gossip continues no matter where he goes. Although he doesn't want to admit it, Haruto can't deny the rumors, as he doesn't even know how he got there. One day, suddenly, his parents informed him that he had been admitted as a special student. Even wanting to ask why, it's now too late, as his parents have passed away, and he was admitted to the school with 0 points in magic. Without magical abilities, he cannot graduate from the course, and because of that, he was forced to become a swordsman. In today's society, where magic is dominant, he is seen as useless, someone who can only fight hand-to-hand, a burden to others. Because of this, he earned the nickname God of Plagues. Guys, I don't know, but this story is reminding me of that anime from last season. The fights were insane. Let's see if he's going to awaken some incredible power now to shut everyone up. Upon arriving home, Haruto finds a letter. He sees it on the couch, notices that there is no seal or sender's name, and then, curious, decides to open it. He removed the first piece of the seal, and his eyes began to shine with an intense blue light coming directly from the letter. Intrigued, he looked at this strong light, wondering what was happening. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from his house, being sucked into the letter. In other words, the hack knocked on the door and took him away. And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget, our goal is to reach 20,000 subscribers. So let the system appear for us. Inside the letter, Haruto opens his eyes. He doesn't understand where he is, as seconds ago he was on the couch in his house, and now he finds himself in a blue subspace. At that moment, a voice resonates, saying that they are in the year 2054, according to the calendar. The voice asks if he is Haruto, 16 years old. He replies that he is, and then the voice asks him to pay attention. It introduces itself as Kuju Haruto, claiming to be Haruto himself, but from the future, sending that letter from a distant time. It explains that in 10 years, he will become a wizard capable of manipulating space and time. However, 10 years is a long time. Therefore, he decided to train his younger version to become a great space wizard. He notices that Haruto doesn't seem very convinced, but asks him to at least follow one instruction: to enter the F-level dungeon, the Imperial Garden, alone. There he will tell the rest of the story. Then the letter shows an image of a forbidden gate. Shortly after, Haruto is already inside the dungeon, commenting that there's nothing there. He asks the Mr. Letter if this isn't a prank. The letter responds that he can burn or tear it, but he must first proceed and turn right. Haruto, still suspicious, follows the instructions and comes face to face with a huge wall. Standing in front of the dead end, he asks if he can burn the Mr. Letter now. The letter, in turn, asks him to place it between the cracks in the wall. Sighing, Haruto does as instructed. At that moment, an energy begins to connect along the wall. He watches in disbelief as the wall starts to open. Surprised, Haruto realizes that he has never heard of a hidden route in this dungeon. Ahead, there is an intense energy. As he approaches, the letter explains that it is a skill cube and that he needs to touch it to acquire a new ability. As soon as Haruto places his hand on the cube, Mr. Letter apologizes, saying that this isn't exactly what they expected. Around him, everything begins to exude a strange red energy. A hole opens in the ceiling and something begins to descend. Haruto watches carefully, trying to understand what that mysterious cube is. Suddenly, the parts of the dungeon come together to form a giant stone golem. Upon seeing this, Haruto thinks he's in trouble, and in the next instant, he receives a blow to the head that sends him flying. Crumpled on the ground, he is all bruised and confused about what is happening. He wonders if he has been tricked, as he feels his consciousness fading away more and more. When he believes his end is near, he begins to remember his parents. The Mr. Letter then calls his name and taunts him. "You're a failure at school and are going to die. It will be a meaningless death after being deceived." Then he asked himself if he was truly okay with that. And at that moment, he remembered his miserable life, where nothing good ever happened. However, that was just his life. He had come to terms with it and given up on trying anything different. But now he tried to stand, telling himself that he couldn't accept that fate. As the golem moved closer, Lord Carta commanded him to survive and change the purposeless life he was living. When the golem approached, an explosion occurred, and he could see nothing more. At that moment, a screen appeared with information about a hidden mission called the Time-Space Mage, and its requirement had been fulfilled, canceling the adventurer's death. Now his body would undergo a reversal. His eyes shone as he firmly declared that he would survive in this world, for something inside him had changed. He radiated a powerful energy, having acquired the ability of time-space magic. If you're enjoying this journey, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, otherwise you won't get your own grand system. In this moment, he appeared once again, transformed into a new person, surrounded by the system. Various screens popped up in front of him, showing that he was now at level 1 of potential release with 30% power. Lord Carta explained that to take the shortcut to awakening, certain requirements needed to be met. met, and he apologized for not having explained this sooner. Originally, time-space magic wouldn't be discovered for another 10 years. Then it all clicked for Haruto, who asked if Carta was really a future version of himself. Carta told him to stay sharp as the tutorial was about to begin. In the end, Haruto would be ready to face and take down any extras who dared cross his path. He jumps up, dodging the blow that cracks the ground. Up there, he realizes that his body is light, so this must be the effect of his passive ability. At that moment, while floating, Mr. Letter says he will teach him. He speaks, "Listen, Haruto, don't just use your eyes to see. Feel the flow of time that governs this world." Haruto reflects on the flow of time, and yes, he has an absolute power to do that. After all, he is his future version. While he thinks, the golem advances with a giant punch from its right hand, and Haruto remains focused. He tries to feel the flow of time as the golem's hand approaches closer and closer. In that instant, it seemed like time itself was cracking. With just a blink of an eye, the golem, which had been there, furious, didn't understand anything. Haruto dodged the giant hand, and using space-time magic, accelerated his body at high speed. He moved forward, jumping up the golem's arm until he reached its head. There, face to face with the monster, he drew his sword, knowing that was the creature's core. With precision, Haruto plunged the sword into the exact spot on the golem's head. Immediately, the core began to crack, and an explosion occurred. He had shattered the core into pieces that vanished into the air. He descended to the ground as the golem disintegrated, like in classic Power Rangers scenes where the villain explodes and a cloud of smoke rises. At the same time, a system notification appeared, informing him that his adventurer level increased by 4, his skill went up by 8, and he earned 45,000 credits. He looked at all this thinking, who would believe in him now? The god of plagues was gaining enough power to get back at those background characters. His hand was still trembling, but he felt much better. Speaking with Mr. Letter, he asked what the next step would be. Mr. Letter replied that for the next step, he would need to exit the dungeon. Haruto, walking, asked if there was still something to do. Mr. Letter said yes, there was a small detour needed because he had to go where Shinomheim would be killed by a monster. As soon as he heard that name, Haruto stopped, freezing his foot to the ground. He asked, shocked, What did you say?" Shinomheim was his best friend, the only person who cared about him at the academy. Mr. Letter confirmed, saying she and some friends would enter the D-ranked dungeon in Aikibukuro and would be killed by a monster. That's why he needed to go there, save her, and change the future. Determined, Haruto ran off in search of his friend, refusing to let her suffer again. And hey, you could run like that for a like too, right? Guys, give us a hand and leave a like for us. As he ran, Mr. Letter narrated. According to the Western calendar, today is May 23, 2024. In the deepest part of Aikibukuro, a D-ranked dungeon, there is an unexpected appearance of a C-rank monster. Shinomheim will die today. Even with a rescue spell cast by her group, there will be no adventurers nearby, and they will all be annihilated. While Mr. Letter explained, Haruto was just shouting, telling him to shut up because he didn't want to know the details. Irritated, he confronted Mr. Letter for not warning him earlier. Mr. Letter then reminded him, "But weren't you the one who said you didn't want to be associated with anyone at the academy, so that no one would be bothered by your bad luck?" Haruto fell silent, but continued running with even more determination. Meanwhile, Mr. Letter taunted, "Why are you so irritated now? After all, you are the god of plagues." Suddenly, several goblins appeared surrounding Haruto. With their teeth bared and eyes fixed, the monsters prepared to attack. Mr. Letter told Haruto to stop acting like he had just discovered everything, reminding him that this world could not be changed so easily. Haruto, without responding, drew his sword and charged at the goblins, cutting them into pieces. While fighting the monsters, he shouted for Mr. Letter to be quiet, asserting that he would do whatever he wanted with time. Then Mr. Letter laughed at all of this as it was precisely the response he expected. As a reward, he decided to teach Haruto a new application of space-time magic. Further back, we are in the dungeon of Aikibukuro in the deepest area where a large blue explosion had just occurred. Our colleague Hein was thrown into the air by the blast. Her teammates watched her fall to the ground, and in shock, they didn't know what to do as she was unconscious. Hein tried to open her eyes a bit, but the only thing she could see was a figure holding a sword with its head on fire. It was the C-rank extra boys, a shadow sentinel. The boys who were with her complained, saying that no one had warned them about such a strong monster. One of the girls screamed, trying to cast a rescue spell, but it was unsuccessful. The group's mage asked everyone to calm down and try to attack together, as that would give them a chance. But another member at the back trembled in fear, muttering that he didn't want to die. While they argued, the large sentinel raised its sword, surrounded by a blazing aura, ready to attack. They tried to react, but the monster delivered powerful blows, and Hein, upon waking, saw her fallen companions, reaching out in despair and begging for help. With the monster slaughtering the group, Hein struggled to rise, pulled out her staff, and cast a fire spell against it. But the attack had no effect. The monster's head flared up in flames as if nothing had happened. Desperate, she feared that this was her end. Suddenly, the monster approached and raised its sword to attack her. In desperation, Hein screamed for help. At that moment, the space-time chain blocking magic was activated, preventing the monster's sword from hitting her. Haruto appeared, holding back the attack with one hand, and asked firmly, "Are you okay, Hein?" Upon realizing it was him, she looked at him with tears in her eyes, hardly believing the scene. Haruto told her to stay behind him as he would now face the monster alone. The sentinel charged, wielding its flaming sword against Haruto, but he dodged with a jump as the blade pierced the ground. Haruto landed on the other side, trying to regain his balance while the gigantic monster came at him again. The two crossed swords fiercely, and Haruto quickly realized the difficulty of cutting the monster. Even with numerous strikes, the creature was too resilient, and suddenly, Haruto's sword began to crack. A piece flew into the air, and he felt he had complicated things, especially when the sentinel started exuding an intense red energy, preparing for an even more powerful attack. Haruto concentrated energy in his hands, forming a black and red sphere, launching it toward the sentinel. An explosion occurred, and he managed to dodge quickly, appearing behind the monster. At that moment, he realized that his sword was not effective against the monster's armor, but rather against unprotected points like its head. As he prepared to attack, Mr. Letter warned that his sword would break if he continued like that. Haruto replied that he knew this and then used the material reconstruction magic of spacetime, restoring his sword instantly. instantly. At the same time, the Sentinel launched a ball of red energy, and Haruto took advantage of the reconstruction to deliver a decisive blow, cutting the monster. With a great slash, the Sentinel's head lost its glow, and Haruto landed on the ground. Mr. Letter stated that he had changed his own destiny. Hein watched in awe, hardly believing what she was seeing. Haruto, once called weak, was now there, facing and defeating a powerful monster right in front of her. After being saved, Hein, in shock, asked what was happening, demanding that he explain how he had gained such power. With an awkward smile, Haruto scratched his head and replied, "Don't mind that woman," and putting his hands up, he asked her to keep it a secret. She began to blush, thinking, in other words, and turned even redder. The idea of keeping that secret just between the two of them made her embarrassed, making it clear that she had feelings for Haruto, didn't she? A bit suspicious, he responded. "Yeah, that's right, a secret just for us." She smiled but quickly asked, "So what was that absurd strength earlier?" Haruto tried to respond, but before he could say anything, Mr. Letter intervened. "Haruto, I want to minimize the ramifications in the future, so avoid making any careless comments about space-time magic." He was at a loss for what to say, while Hein looked at him suspiciously. Trying to escape the situation, he said, "Could you keep secret about what I'm going to tell you too?" Hein, confused, agreed, and Haruto, in turn, made up something about training a special swordsman technique. Mr. Carter laughed, satisfied with the lie, and Hein finally said she would understand if it was something like that and promised to keep the secret. Haruto sighed in relief. "Phew, I managed to trick this girl." After that, the story showed the executive agency of adventurers in the high school division. Haruto reflected on how he had managed to save Hein from supposed death and had also acquired overwhelming power. Although he could not change the past, he knew he could influence the future by changing what was to come. Meanwhile, some classmates called him God of Plagues and teased him. "Hey, come here. We heard you were in the dungeon of Ikebukuro yesterday." They surrounded him, mocking him for not helping at all and even making up stories that he had run away upon encountering an extra boys. They laughed, even mentioning that the hospital charged a lot for the treatment of a friend who was injured on the same day, and then they started pressuring him to pay the expenses. Surrounded, Haruto remained silent until one of them conjured a fireball, threatening him. "Let's make you our practice target." At that moment, Haruto exploded. "That's enough." They were confused by his reaction, but Haruto continued, "That's enough. Are you deaf, you pieces of trash?" And when he glared at each one menacingly, they began to advance for a fight. With his increased powers, Haruto clearly saw each movement of his opponents. Using only his chain, he easily took them all down, leaving them on the ground, sweaty and exhausted. Irritated, they complained, but Haruto replied firmly, "Listen well, don't ever come near me again, or this will happen again." He took their lighters and wallets, and lighting the lighter, added, "This is a promise between us." Upon seeing Haruto's threatening gaze, the three of them broke into a cold sweat, terrified by his determination. After that, Haruto decided to return to his classes. In class, he remembered that the next lesson would be about measuring magical capacity. The teacher then announced, "Kuju-kun." Haruto responded, thinking that although his magical capacity was almost zero, he was curious to see how the situation would change now, as he was the mage of spacetime. Determined to test his power, he planned to insert a bit of spacetime magic into the measuring mirror. He raised his hands ready to execute his power and placed a small dose of magic. When he opened his eyes, a massive blue energy exploded upward. The teacher was surprised by what was happening there, and soon everyone saw an intense blue light shining at the center of the magic mirror until the mirror shattered into several pieces. Astonished, the teacher fell to the ground, not understanding what had just happened. The students were also perplexed, while Haruto scratched his head, quietly commenting, "I think I went a bit overboard." Unintentionally, he had distinguished himself in an undesirable way. In the audience, Hein watched everything, smiling discreetly. Later, as they left school, the classmates whispered, "Hey, look at that guy, the God of Plagues who destroyed the meter. It seems he used some kind of unknown magic." They speculated among themselves that, if it were true, he could be more powerful than a rank A. Haruto overheard this gossip, surprised by the change in tone of the rumors, and noticed that it was even more tiring than before. That was when he heard a voice calling, "Hey, Haruto, over here." He looked around but saw no one until the voice came again. "In the bushes here." When he looked, he was startled to see a peculiar little creature. It was a small talking being that turned out to be Mr. Carta, Haruto's magical advisor. "Mr. Carta, and why are you looking like that?" Haruto asked, intrigued. The little being explained that it was using space-time magic to inhabit the body of a stuffed bear from his home. Haruto grumbled that this didn't make much sense, but Mr. Carta continued with an urgent tone, "We don't have time for games, Haruto. The Chaos Dragon has appeared ahead of schedule." Upon hearing this, Haruto was alarmed. He knew that the Chaos Dragon was an extremely dangerous creature that had destroyed the Adventurers Guild in the area. This monster caused an unprecedented catastrophe in his future, and by appearing ahead of time, it was crucial that they defeated it before it caused even greater havoc. Haruto suggested that they should inform the Adventurers Guild to form an extermination team with the best warriors, but Mr. Carta interrupted him. "We don't have time. Look up." When Haruto raised his gaze, he realized that the sky was growing dark. There was no wind, only a sinister silence. The Chaos Dragon was already there, hovering over the academy. "Wait, wasn't it supposed to be trapped in a dungeon?" Haruto asked, confused. Mr. Carta explained that the Chaos Dragon is a ferocious migratory species and would never be confined to a single place. Soon, the monster descended toward the school, with an immense pressure that seemed to crush everything around. Just the beating of the dragon's wings caused destruction, and Haruto realized that if they didn't do something quickly, there would be deaths. The students who left school cheerful and carefree looked up and were horrified to see the monster in the sky. In a panic, they wondered why it was there, while the dragon watched the crowd and roared, spreading terror. The crowd began to run desperately, and a voice came over the loudspeaker, ordering everyone prepare for battle. Normal students evacuate to the dormitories. At that moment, figures dressed in white, the wizards of the student council, the school security force, appeared to confront the dragon. They raised a magic circle, launching a series of attacks at the creature. A girl with blonde hair raised her staff and shouted, instructing everyone not to let the dragon approach school territory. A magic circle appeared over the dragon's head, unleashing an immense explosion in the skies. Those watching believed the attack had worked and praised the girl. She did it. She's the best as always. However, the young girl girl was startled to see that the dragon not only survived but also seemed unscathed after the explosion, making it clear that the battle was just beginning. The dragon roared and panic grew among the students. Amid the chaos, the dragon formed a large ball of energy in its mouth, about to unleash a devastating attack. When it expelled the strike, the energy descended directly upon the students, hitting them squarely as everything around exploded. When the smoke began to clear, it revealed a devastating scene. All the members of the student council were down, defeated. Haruto watched everything, thinking that in an instant it was all over. The stuffed bear beside him commented indifferently that this was expected. After all, they were still just students. Haruto reprimanded the inappropriate comment, but the bear continued, "Haruto." It then threw something pink at his head. Haruto, confused, asked what the bear was doing, and it explained that it was dragon incense, a special aroma that attracts these monsters. The bear explained that since the dragon is a fierce creature with low intelligence, it would focus solely on Haruto. Now, Haruto would have to face the dragon alone. The bear encouraged him, "Show what you can do, kid. I believe in you." The dragon advanced toward Haruto, and the bear, already shouting, urged him to run. Haruto dashed away, and on his way saw Hein helping the other injured students. He decided to move away to avoid involving Hein in the confrontation. The bear encouraged him, "That's right, run. This way we'll have fewer witnesses for the battle that's about to start." Haruto ran as fast as he could, with the dragon in pursuit and the sea around him darkened as the beast flew. They reached the Giorno-Kanama station, and Haruto noticed that the train yard was deserted, so the bear instructed him to jump the fence to lure the dragon there. While climbing, Haruto asked the bear about the monster's characteristics. The bear explained, "It is of the darkness element. Its breath is deadly. Anyone who takes the hit head-on is basically doomed. Also, the miasma around it causes a debilitating effect, and it is resistant to careless physical attacks." Haruto then questioned whether this was the absolute monster they had spoken about. The bear confirmed, saying that it was still young, and because of that, it was possible to attract it just by smell. Haruto listened attentively until the bear mentioned the price of the dragon incense, 500,000 credits. Haruto, shocked, questioned the amount and grabbed the stuffed bear, threatening to strangle it. 500,000 credits? How did you take that from my account? And how do you know my security code? Then he remembered the bear was himself, coming from the future. Of course it would know. Haruto released the bear, took a deep breath, and calmed down. Then the bear reassured him, "Don't worry, kid. Defeat the dragon, and the reward will be worth it. The money is just a bonus. With the skill cube that this monster possesses, you'll gain a new space-time magic skill." Determined, Haruto prepared for the confrontation, aware that this battle would be decisive. Haruto listened attentively as they would discuss the topic of the Chaos Dragon again. It had not yet reached its mature form, and the dragon's weak point, the core, would be exposed. When he was about to reveal where the core was located, the dragon appeared from above, beginning to exhale a breath toward Haruto. The attack hit the ground, and he jumped back, holding his bear. As the dragon roared from above, the bear warned, "Be careful, Haruto." He replied sarcastically, "Thanks for the useless advice, right? It didn't help at all." The bear clung to Haruto's back while the dragon breathed fire everywhere. Haruto needed to run to avoid being hit by a blow that, as the bear had warned, could be fatal. When he finally managed to dodge, Haruto began to think about his next action, but was alarmed to realize that an overwhelming energy was approaching him. At that moment, a great explosion occurred. The dragon watched as the dust rose, revealing a visible core in its chest. Haruto realized that this core could be his target. He took off running with his sword, recalling the energy he had felt moments before. The bear was impressed. He had just applied space-time magic under pressure. At that instant, Haruto jumped and came face to face with the dragon. Spotting the core in its chest, he exclaimed, "I found it. This is the dragon's core." Preparing himself, he pointed his sword upward and attacked with all his might, but to his surprise, he felt no effect from the blow. An energy began to exude from the spot, and he shouted, alarmed, "It can't be." The dragon disappeared. He complained, "Hey, sneaky bear, you never warned me it had a skill like that." The bear shouted back, explaining that the Chaos Dragon could turn its entire body into miasma and advised caution when attacking. Haruto asked the stuffed bear to alert him the next time something important like that was revealed. The bear continued explaining that the dragon could also materialize the miasma and release an army of small dragon-like figures known as the Legion. At that moment, Haruto spotted the dragon again, now surrounded by several little dragon-like creatures spreading through the air. He looked at it and thought, oh no, it was true that it was just a young dragon. As he observed the mini monsters in the sky, he grew worried, questioning whether he could deal with them in the conventional way. The bear commented that originally this was supposed to be a strong enemy that wouldn't appear for the next 5 years. Haruto grumbled, asking why a monster like that was showing up now. The bear suggested that since Haruto was changing the future, the dragon appeared earlier. It then pressed Haruto, take responsibility for this and defeat that dragon properly. Haruto scoffed, complaining, so it's all my fault now? At that instant, a huge dragon hand came toward him. Using his agility, Haruto dodged just as an explosion occurred where he had been. The mini dragons flew in his direction, but he scared them off with his sword, thinking, great, it seems these little dragons don't turn into miasma when I hit them. Meanwhile, the bear advised Haruto to scatter the weaker minions and wait for an opportunity to attack. He dusted off his legs, stating that he would do it even without any encouragement. At that moment, he was using his space-time magic on his legs and his eye was shining brightly. Then he charged toward the dragon, cutting down all the minions that appeared in his way. The bear watched and exclaimed, look, he defeated all the smaller dragons. It seems your level also increased by 3 because of that. Haruto was exhausted, panting, wondering if the little dragons were finally done. But what was before him was that giant dragon, which was gathering power in its mouth. When it opened its mouth, a massive energy was launched at Haruto. He was shocked by that and tried to dodge as quickly as possible, but a gigantic explosion occurred. Luckily, he managed to hide behind a train because had the attack hit him, he would have been in serious trouble. However, the dragon was already opening its mouth again, and Haruto thought, damn. He started running as several explosions went off around him. He surveyed the damage and thought, damn, I spent all my stamina dealing with the minions and now I'm at my limit. He realized he would need to wait a few minutes before attacking with full strength again. He needed to find a way to hit the dragon's weakness, which was its core, but the dragon wasn't making it easy. It was up there and Haruto, down below recognized that the situation was critical. The bear said Haruto's attacks wouldn't reach the dragon because it was flapping its wings, releasing miasma into the sky. Haruto wondered what he could do. Looking around, he found nothing he could use to get up there. Then he spotted a train car and had an idea. This is it. If I do this, I'll definitely make it. The bear was there, worried. What are you going to do, Haruto? The situation is getting gloomier by the minute. As the bear spoke, Haruto took his face and said, come with me. He jumped from side to side, climbing the upper structures, while the bear thought that he wouldn't be able to reach the dragon no matter how high he climbed. Haruto kept holding the bear's face and tossed it upward, saying that this was why he was doing it. The dragon focused watched Haruto. He used his chains, employing space-time magic, and made the block. The bear, who was confused, saw Haruto prepare for the attack. As the dragon stared at him, Haruto jumped from above, determined not to let the dragon turn into miasma this time. He released the binding chains because this type of enemy couldn't be contained for more than a few seconds. However, in this case, that would be more than enough. Haruto was charging in full force, wielding his sword, and shouted as he finally struck the dragon's core. At that moment, when the dragon was chained, he struck even deeper, and the chains began to break. But now it was too late. Haruto managed to hit the dragon's core, which was screaming loudly. He sliced it with his sword, causing a massive explosion on the ground. After the dust began to settle, Haruto walked over the debris as he was the only one left standing. Meanwhile, the system announced that he had defeated the Chaos Dragon. He was breathing heavily because he had finally managed to take down that dragon in a brawl. Meanwhile, the system indicated that he had leveled up by 15, improved his skill by 28, and even earned over 800,000 credits, along with the material made from the Chaos Dragon. The system now recommended that he advance to rank C adventurer. Mr. Bear remarked as expected of himself, but complained angrily because Haruto had used him to defeat the dragon. Our boy was hardly paying attention and looked at his system screen, noticing that his special magic skill had increased by 20, and his other spells were at level 2, unlocking over 80% of his potential in space-time magic. The bear said that at least he had succeeded. Whoa, what a huge catastrophe. So he did a good job. But then he turned and said that someone had reported the incident, and it would be bad if they found out that it was them who did it. So it's better to get out of here as fast as possible. Haruto agreed that at least they were in sync on one thing. Thus, he jumped onto the subway screen and ran away. Later, it was still night. We were at Haruto's house. He was sitting on the sofa with the bear while opening the snack he bought to munch on. Since the man isn't made of iron, right, folks? At that moment, a question popped into his mind, and he asked if the bear didn't need to eat. The bear replied, try using common sense. Okay, can a stuffed bear eat? But thinking about that common sense, a bear talking is already pretty crazy, right? At that moment, he got up saying he almost forgot about it. He poured water into a cup while saying that he was home for his father, his mother, and Raya. Even turned away, he asked if that bothered the bear. But of course it did, since he is, well, him after all. Deep down, the bear thought it was better to keep the matter of Rhea a secret because it was too early for him to know about it. After that, Haruto finished his water, knowing he would find out the truth when he became a great spacetime mage. At that moment, Haruto remembered that he had obtained some materials to make a weapon from that dragon. He opened his inventory, and inside was the fang of the Chaos Dragon. The bear said that his sword was damaged, so this was the perfect moment, and for that reason in the morning, they would go out to fix it. Then the next day, we were in front of a giant tower. Haruto used to think he would never reach that level, as he was just a little adventurer. But the bear smiled, saying, what? Now it's possible. So now let's get down to business, guys. In front of us, we were in the reception lobby. A voice spoke over the intercom, asking number 23 to go to the cashier. After that, a woman asked what the reason for the visit was. Haruto replied that he had conquered a dungeon and would like to review his results. The woman looked at his face and thought he was just another common weak adventurer. She took the card, saying she would check the identification. When she input it into the system, Haruto looked on, impressed, as he had never seen this before. The woman said that to verify his identity, he needed to place his hand on the panel. When he placed his hand on the system, the woman took a look and was astonished because he managed to rank up to C in just one day. She thought it was impossible and maybe the terminal wasn't working properly. Everyone around paid attention to what was happening. Haruto himself thought this was bad because he was going to stand out too much. Since he didn't want this to cause problems, he used his spatial magic, the material backlash. At that moment, he channeled the power into the machine and called the woman, saying the system had just authenticated his identity. She saw that it said rank E and became calmer. He, unconcerned, asked if everything was alright, but she, confused, handed the card back because this was quite strange. Haruto took it, thanking her. Meanwhile, in the system, it stated that he had gone from an E rank adventurer to a C rank. The bear commented that this was impressive. Haruto agreed because this way they avoided confusion in the future. He asked if he was going the right way. From here on out, he needed to enter the elevator. Inside, he waited until the door finally opened. He saw that he couldn't enter as it was only for rank hunters. The bear just told him to forget about that. He used his magic, transforming again into the form of a card. Haruto wondered why he did that, but he just said to scan him on the scanner by the door. In the same instant, the door began to open and Haruto was impressed. The bear said that now they were going to make a suitable weapon for a space-time mage. At that moment, he heard a voice asking if there was a student tour up there. They entered the room while Mr. Card stated that they were not on a trip, but were there to request a synthesized weapon. The guy stood up, asking if he was an adventurer of at least rank A. This was the head of the weapons lab, Takamune. He stated that no matter how much he looked, he just seemed like an F-rank student and asked if he had not tricked the security. In his head, Mr. Card told him to show the item. So he pulled out of his inventory a fang from the Chaos Dragon, asking him to use this material to enhance his weapon. Takamune approached to see what it was. Using his system, he checked, saying that it wasn't so bad. He asked if it was Haruto who hunted it, and since Haruto just nodded, he said, then let's go. Takamune took his watch and selected some options because they were about to begin. At that moment, the floor seemed to be opening up. He said that this was the most advanced weapon synthesizing device in Japan. The scientist continued, saying that the material he brought wasn't even recognized by the guild's database. Therefore, he was going to take his opportunity for academic purposes and would let him use this powerful machine at the same time. Haruto placed the bag on the ground while Mr. Card said he would teach him how to use the synthesizer. When he was in front, the system appeared and Mr. master card said he should first decide which weapon he would use as a base in the process. In his case, it would be the Academy Sword. The next step was to decide which attribute he wanted on the weapon. The number of attributes was determined by his rank. The third step involved the materials he would use to enhance it, such as minerals or monster parts. But sometimes, there was a possibility of combining one sword with another sword. So now, our material would be the Fang of the Chaos Dragon. The fourth step was to decide all of this to reach the synthesis stage, as the result would be determined by the previous steps. Haruto took the sword to use as a base. Since he could only choose one attribute, the card instructed him to select the light element. Haruto asked if, after this, he had to add the materials. And yes, that's when he placed the Fang, and the capsule went back inside. Now they needed to set the forging time. The card told him to set it for 3 years. Haruto didn't understand and said that was way too long, but he had to do it, and thus, the synthesis of the weapon was beginning. The machine asked him to wait 3 years for everything to be complete. However, at that moment, the card jumped from his pocket and entered the machine. Suddenly, a great light was emitted from inside, and finally it said, "Thank you for waiting, your synthesis is ready." Then displayed the new weapon, a sword of chaos. Rank A Haruto looked on, impressed, because it seemed very powerful. The scientist arrived with his mouth open, because he had set it for years, but it was ready in 10 seconds. He was searching through his system, not understanding how this happened. But at that moment, the letter was calling Haruto to leave. He sheathed his sword and said goodbye to the scientist, while he yelled, telling him to wait. Outside, Haruto heard some people talking because they had heard a rumor. An anonymous person killed a migratory dragon in a matter of seconds. They were wondering what kind of person could do that. Haruto realized that this conversation was a bit strange, so he thought it best to head home quickly. But the bear insisted that no, they needed to test the new sword today. Haruto asked where. He smiled, saying he had a secret place where the sacred beast Cerberus was located. Haruto felt scared just hearing that name. Just then, Rin shouted Haruto and came running. When she got close, she began to cry, saying she was relieved that he was alive because after the monster attacked the school, she couldn't find him anywhere. She had sent messages and he hadn't gone to school that day either. Then she shouted, saying she was very worried, while the fool asked why she was there. Rin said she came to deliver a request. Haruto understood, as she was a top student in the second year and in the mage program. Meanwhile, the bear whispered for him not to give any information about what they had just done. Rin continued, saying that anyway, she was very happy that Haruto was okay. After that, he even apologized for worrying her like that. But at that moment, she saw the stuffed animal on his shoulders and was enchanted, saying it was beautiful. She picked it up and twirled it in the air, and afterwards she was granted a hug, saying he had a very cute stuffed animal. And since he noticed that she liked it a lot, he left, saying she could keep the stuffed animal and return it to him later. Meanwhile, the bear thought, son of a gun. He left, leaving Rin blushing along with her grumpy bear. And so Rin waved goodbye, very happy. The next day, the bear was furious with Haruto. He said she returned it quickly. But that wasn't the problem for him because of that, he was able to see a friend he lost 10 years ago, all thanks to Haruto. So he expressed his gratitude. At that moment, someone could be seen sitting at the top of the school building. He thought the person known as the God of Plagues seemed interesting, so he decided to make her his next target. Then he called out, "Please face me, mysterious dragon slayer." Next, the scene shifted to the student council room. Someone slammed a hand on a desk piled with papers, and a woman asked if he really knew nothing about what happened. This was Yuzuki, the vice president of the student council. Haruto simply replied with a no. Yuzuki continued explaining that the day before yesterday, a migrating dragon attacked the school, and she had heard that he ran off in the same direction as the monster. Haruto tried to make an excuse, saying that the dragon changed course midway and followed another student. Therefore, he was certain it was that boy who defeated the dragon. Yuzuki asked if he knew the identity of the student who defeated the dragon. He responded that the moment was very confusing, and all he thought about was escaping. Finally, when it seemed like the conversation was over, Haruto said goodbye at the door. However, she asked him to wait a second. Even so, he left, wondering why he was acting so suspicious. The teddy bear commented that it was probably related to the rumors. On the internet, there were photos of the great dragon, and everyone was trying to discover who the savior was. Haruto, a bit desperate, asked if they couldn't use space-time magic to contain the media spread. However, that was impossible with the abilities he currently possessed. He left the room, disheartened, sighing, and when he entered the classroom, everyone stood up to look and comment, "He's here." Haruto sat in his seat, thinking he had been avoiding classes precisely because of this, as now everyone was watching him. At that moment, Rin arrived, saying he needed to be more careful. He even asked the girl to calm down, but as they talked, someone walked among the crowd. It was that guy with white hair from before who approached with a strange tone, saying he would be the one to defeat Haruto. This was Sumeragi, the president of the student council, who proclaimed himself the genius mage reigning at the top of the school. He asked if the boy in front of him was Haruto, and when Haruto confirmed, Sumeragi raised his hand and declared he had come to challenge him to a magic duel. Everyone watched the scene. Some even laughed, saying Sumeragi was only there to humiliate Haruto. Even so, Haruto looked confident. Sumeragi thought Haruto was just an insect, but was convinced he had destroyed the magic measurement device. Traces of an unknown substance were found at the site, and Sumeragi knew it was Haruto who had annihilated the Chaos Dragon. Haruto, on the other hand, was confused, wondering how this guy knew all of that. But there, before him, Sumeragi spoke excitedly, saying it was interesting they could cut the buds while still in the early stages. Then he tossed his cape aside and declared sincerely that he too had defeated a dragon alone. Therefore, they would decide in a duel who was worthy of being the Dragon Slayer. Haruto thought about the magic duel. He knew this was a special kind of confrontation, held between students to measure and evaluate their powers. The results of these duels determined the school ranking and granted more privileges, being a fundamental part of preparing a great adventurer. The only rule for duels was not to use any magic that could kill the opponent or leave them with permanent damage. Participants were selected based on several criteria. However, when the duel was against someone in a higher rank, the challenge party had to agree. Thus, Haruto still had the option to refuse, as the stronger party was challenging the weaker. At that moment, Sumeragi started talking about Rin, saying she should think more carefully about who she associates with if she really wanted to join the student council. He suggested that she seize the opportunity, as he would give her a private and personal lesson on how to join the council. Rin, in, upon hearing these words, didn't like it at all and thanked him for the opportunity with a sad look. Haruto, who was seated, decided to muster up the courage, stood up, and declared that he would accept the duel, as he could not let his woman be taken by that scoundrel. Sumeragi smiled, but Haruto added that he had one condition. Sumeragi asked what that condition was, and Haruto, firmly, replied that the loser of the duel would have to leave the academy. Sumeragi smiled even more and accepted the condition eagerly, commenting that it was now too late to back down. Haruto just watched as he walked away. Shortly after, Haruto's teddy bear comments that he's getting a sharper tongue and is becoming more like his true self. He warns Haruto, saying that Sumeragi is actually very strong. Haruto then asks if the teddy bear knows Sumeragi. The bear explains that he will become the head of the Shinjuku branch of the Adventurers Guild, create many new fire spells, and eventually become one of the 7 sages. Haruto doesn't completely understand, but the teddy bear adds that Sumeragi uses his position to manipulate women under his command, which makes Haruto see him as scum. However, Sumeragi is also skilled at gathering followers to the point that he's known as the Dragon Hunter and self-proclaimed magic genius. The problem is that Haruto doesn't yet have the strength to defeat him. They then decide to check Haruto's stats. It's shown that he's at level 15, rank C, with a level 2 potential and plus 50% power. The teddy bear comments that Haruto has indeed evolved a lot, but compared to Sumeragi's stats, he has 10 times less strength. Seeing this difference before him, Haruto wonders if Sumeragi used space-time magic to reach that level. Just then, he hears some girls lamenting in a corner. One of them is crying, saying that for a moment, she couldn't use magic, and that if this continues, she'll fail her exam. The other tries to comfort her, saying it's part of the process, but admits that at this rate, she might need a private and personal lesson with Sumeragi. Upon hearing this, Haruto feels bothered, thinking that Sumeragi is trying to draw Rin into those private lessons. He approaches the girls and asks if they have a moment to talk. The girls ask who he is, but Haruto responds that they don't need those private lessons because he's going to handle the problem. Haruto then approaches one of the girls, extending his hand. He is now able to understand the movement and internal workings of magic, and the circuits within his body emit a slight overheating effect as he prepares to help. In this case, Haruto only needs to eliminate the disturbances that are blocking the normal flow of magic. The girl watches him, not understanding his intentions, but he uses magic in his hands and applies touches to various points on her body. The other girl approaches, asking what he's doing. He explains that he's trying to make the magic work again. When she turns to see how Yuki is doing, she sees that the girl is able to conjure magic in her hands. Yuki is excited to be able to use magic again, and even her friend notices that the magical effect is stronger than before. The two are overjoyed. Overwhelmed, Yuki blushes and thanks Haruto for helping her, crying with relief at not having to go through the unpleasant experience of a private lesson with the president. Haruto observes the situation and remembers Rin's face. Then he walks away and asks the bear what he needs to do to become stronger, as only 3 days remain until the duel, and he wants to increase his power by exploring a dungeon. The teddy bear smiles as he knows the perfect dungeon for this. He reveals that the reward for this dungeon is a massive amount of XP and new forms of space-time magic. This will be a great opportunity for Haruto to test the synthesized weapon they created earlier with the summoning of a beast, exactly what he needed. The scene then shows Azabu Dungeon, a rank B crystal labyrinth. Inside the dungeon, Haruto wonders if he really has enough strength to face so many enemies as strong monsters are appearing around him. The teddy bear himself comments that this dungeon is truly worth it, and Haruto thanks him, promising not to let any of these monsters escape his sword. He charges forward with determination, resolved to take down the monsters and destroy the crystal dungeon. An hour later, Haruto reaches the deepest part of the dungeon, where some people are fighting. One of the warriors tries to strike the monster with his sword, while the mage uses a powerful fire spell, thinking that would be enough. However, when the smoke clears, a monster, a dark crystal knight, is unharmed. The two are terrified to see that their strongest attacks had no effect. The knight then counterattacks, and they close their eyes, having no way left to defend themselves. But at that moment, an energy appears and counterattacks the monster. When they open their eyes, they see someone facing the knight using a sword with magic. Haruto destroys the monster with a devastating strike, and the two, relieved, thank him for saving them. Haruto warns that enemies appear quickly in this dungeon and that they should leave as soon as possible. The warrior, still struggling to walk, asks if Haruto won't come with them, but Haruto responds that he'll stay and keep farming XP, drawing the monster's attention to himself. The warrior, limping, thanks Haruto and wishes him good luck. As Haruto looks on confidently, the teddy bear informs him that he has already defeated 89 monsters but hasn't yet reached his goal. Haruto knows this and is prepared to level up as fast as possible, so he continues, cutting down everything in his path. The teddy bear explains that this type of monster grants more XP inside the labyrinth, and if defeated efficiently, Haruto will level up quickly. At that moment, 3 monsters appear behind Haruto. He simply opens his eyes and activates chain magic, launching the 3 into the air. Then he draws the Sword of Chaos, infused with the light element, and strikes, slicing the monsters into pieces midair. As the teddy bear gives a few instructions, Haruto notices there are still many enemies ahead. He plants his feet firmly on the ground, determined not to leave a single armored foe standing from this moment on. With a sweeping attack, he strikes all the enemies before him. Haruto, with magic radiating from his body, brings his sword down on the crystal knights one by one. After countless strikes, he realizes there are still many enemies behind him, but something different appears in front of him, a giant knight charging toward him. It's the Dark Crystal General. And to think the guy only has 560 attack power, with an absurd magic resistance. Haruto thought, damn it, this guy is way too strong. The two clashed swords in the midst of battle, and Haruto could feel the monster's power was immense. Still, he thought that if he used his sword's power, he might have a chance. A purple energy began to emanate from the blade, but at that moment, the monster came at him with another brutal, slashing attack. Even so, Haruto kept his sword charged with a purple energy energy and prepared to strike again, his eyes radiating magic. He charged toward the giant, but in the middle of the fight, a little bear interrupted him, saying, "Hey Haruto, what are you doing?" Haruto, irritated, answered that he was busy, facing not only the general, but also several other monsters. The bear insisted. Haruto needed to understand that space-time magic worked differently than regular magic. It wasn't just a matter of magical ability, it involved the factor of chronos, the flow of time itself. Only those who understood this principle could control space-time magic. Hearing that, Haruto complained, "And you tell me this now? Couldn't you have said it earlier, you damn bear?" Meanwhile, he kept cutting down monsters, summoning chains from beyond that pierced through the nights, splitting them in half. But suddenly, a different opponent appeared, a dark crystal knight who seemed to wield powerful magic. As Haruto dodged the attacks, the bear warned him, "This one is a space-time mage. Remember, to win, you need to be in sync with the chronos factor. Use the time flow to your advantage to defeat all your enemies." Upon hearing this, Haruto activated his skill, opening his eye where multiple magical circles appeared. He could now see the direction of every incoming attack with precision. In the middle of the battle's smoke, he remained untouched, controlling each movement with care. Stretching his hand forward, he summoned powerful magic against the monsters. When the blast was over, he saw his enemies lying defeated on the ground and finally understood. So this is how you use the time flow. The bear smiled, satisfied with Haruto's progress, even thinking the boy might have more talent than he did in the past. Learning all of this had not been easy. After a while, Haruto drove his sword into yet another knight, rising confidently amid the bodies on the ground, while the system displayed that he had leveled up multiple times. With determination, Haruto asked himself where the next objective was. He knew the final challenge in this dungeon was approaching. Now what lay ahead of him was the dungeon boss, the sacred beast, Cerberus. The battle had only just begun. When faced with an enormous door that would lead him to the other side, he observed it, feeling a bit dizzy, and muttered that this was the downside of using magic constantly, as it apparently overloaded his brain. The teddy bear looked at him with a smile and asked if Haruto wanted to turn back, to which he replied, gripping the door, that no, he didn't, because time was running out. He crossed through the door, and the system informed him that this was a crystal corridor with a deeper level. Calling out to Haruto, the bear said that the boss had a level of integrity and sensitivity that he wouldn't find in many monsters. After saying this, he warned the bear not to let his guard down. Just then, the system announced the appearance of the sacred beast, Cerberus. Looking at the beast, Haruto remarked that if this had happened in a past stage, they would have called it a magical monster with the soul of a samurai. When he closed his eyes, Cerberus stared at him intently, and the bear handed him something, saying it was to make him feel a bit better. Haruto thanked him, opening the container. He then taunted the monster, asking what it was waiting for to attack him. Sipping from the liquid, he mockingly said it was the strangest dungeon boss he had ever seen. Continuing, the bear pointed out that the beast had an old wound on its right side, and Haruto took note of it. The beast continued to stare, not making any move that might betray its intentions. Haruto noticed this and commented that the beast's aura had returned and that it had taken hold of him. Cerberus then asked him if he had truly been waiting for this and added that he owed a debt of gratitude to a samurai before unleashing a power that seemed to resemble fire. The protagonist observed and the monster attacked, lunging toward him. As the beast attacked, Haruto focused on its wound, his sword in hand, ready to strike precisely at that spot. Landing the first blow, he realized the beast was now close, and he trapped his sword in its mouth, bringing them face to face. He then grabbed its fur and jumped on top of it. The bear warned him that he would be dodging the weapon of sustenance, but Haruto continued to attack. Clenching his fists, he rushed forward, striking the boss's wound, causing the monster to back off, letting out a scream. Again, the bear interrupted, asking him to wait a second. Observing the monster, Haruto wondered if that wasn't treatment for the wound, as it had begun to heal. He thanked it for waiting and said he wanted to fight fairly and justly. The teddy bear questioned if he was insane, warning him that he would die, but Hacker replied, saying that respect must be reciprocated, even when it comes from a monster. He added that if he were to die there, then it would be all he could manage. Then they threw and returned each other's weapons, and the teddy bear observed, noting that the enemy had returned his sword. The boss watched him silently, and Haruto responded that he didn't need to use it, inviting the beast to begin the incredible fight between them. He stated that this fight would be a level-up fight, and that there was no intent to subjugate the dungeon boss. This was just a fight. They stared each other down, and the bear, observing from the corner, wondered what was happening between those two. The boss launched its first attack, releasing fire from its mouth. Hacker blocked it with his arms and glared at the beast, shouting as he braced himself and attacked, landing a hit on the beast as they continued to fight. Desperate, the teddy bear called out to Haruto after he took a blow from the monster. He responded to the bear, saying he would recover and put everything he had into this. Once more, the monster unleashed his power, which he blocked, defending himself, then attacked again, hoping his body could withstand the strain, and then struck again. Thrown far by the monster, he gripped his arms, biting down, but Haruka didn't give up and struck it, landing a punch and sending the beast flying. With a final blow, he declared that this was the end for the beast, delivering the final strike. He watched the beast's demise and said he had always been a musclehead, in every sense, as they say. Then the system appeared to announce that the level had been completed. Watching, he asked if he had finally awakened. The bear also stared intently, and Haruto smiled, saying that somehow he had managed to win. The system notifies him that he has leveled up by 20 levels. Looking at it, he remarks that he managed to level up quickly. Observing further, he asks what that was and is informed that he has received the reward of the space-time mage. Curiously, he mentions that he's been given formal attire and says he'll try it on later. He smiles, then notices the beast rising again and can't believe what he sees. He thought he had defeated it, yet it stands up, unharmed and smiling, facing him directly. Extending his hand, he gently pets it and wonders aloud if this beast is really supposed to be the dungeon boss. The teddy bear chimes in, saying he never would have expected things to end this way, and adds that Haruto has still received his reward, suggesting that he could leave the beast there and be grateful for it. Surprised, the protagonist asks reward and questions if the teddy bear is referring to the equipment. The bear shakes his head, clarifying that he's referring to the summoned beast, a sacred beast, Cerberus, explaining that it's the greatest reward for clearing the crystal labyrinth. However, he notes that they haven't yet formed an official contract. If Haruto lets it drink his blood, the bear explains it will become his servant. Biting his fingers, Haruto draws blood and places it into the beast's mouth. From now on, he will be able to summon the beast whenever he wishes. The system then announces that the beast will now serve him, and that with this they have achieved what they came to do there. 3 days have passed since then. A boy calls out to Mira, asking her to take a look, not just any look, but that look. He passes through a crowd of teenagers, glancing around when a woman calls to him Haruto-kun. The girl questions him about where he's been and what he's been doing since she hasn't been able to reach him anywhere. He responds, explaining that he was in special training preparing for a duel. Alarmed, she questions him, special training, and asks why he's so worn out. Angered, he retorts that one way or another, he's ready. She watches and thinks, is this the same Haruto-kun that I know? He simply listens, eyes closed. They stand in the school corridor, surrounded by trees. A boy watches from atop a wall, muttering, I thought he had already run away a long time ago, but I thought he'd come here to show everyone just how worthy he is. He smiles, a bit melancholic. They pass each other in a corridor and talk for a moment. The girl mentions that the duel will take place at night after school, and the boy smiles, saying it's decided then. He mocks, calling Hakura Mr. Dragon's Slayer, to which Hakura replies seriously, affirming the title. The boy taunts him further, saying, I'm sure you haven't forgotten that silly condition you set, right? Hakura responds, saying he remembers, calling him a loser and demanding he leave the school. Relentlessly, the boy continues, saying it isn't enough and it's boring, prompting Hakura to ask what he just said. With a sinister grin, the boy demands an additional 100 million credits be added to the bet, then walks away. The protagonist stares and says he accepts the proposal. The boy asks if he won't give up when the time comes, and Hakura replies that the boy shouldn't ruin everyone's fun and agrees to the bet. The boy grins, saying the students are there to provoke Hakura and prevent him from backing down. The teddy bear watches in anger, muttering that he's as grumpy as ever. Hira and Hakura watch as the boy taunts, saying he's going to take everything Hakura owns and declares that Hakura is his slave. When Hira begins to protest, he interrupts her and declares it will be 100 million. Smiling at the boy with white hair, he says he's eagerly awaiting him after school for the magical duel. He remarks, Shinonome, I see you chose to defend the wrong person, and asks if she's ready for the social standing he promised her. Attentively, she assures him not to worry. The protagonist smiles, saying he will definitely win. A notification arrives on his phone announcing that the time for the duel has come. Looking around, he sees Ryuga, who sarcastically says that their meeting is a coincidence. Ryuga's friends tease him, asking why he didn't join them before their duel. Ryuga replies that a bonus of 1 million credits per person is at stake, and one of his friends adds that they should go knock him out. Replying to them, the protagonist remarks there's quite a reward. The boys mockingly ask if he's scared, and he replies, telling them that even if he cries, begs, and pleads, he won't let him go and admits he feels a sense of relief. The boys around him stare in shock. He says he's relieved to know that Ryuga is using the same old trick he expected. It's trash, almost a refreshing cliche. So now he can hit him until he's pulp without any worry. He taunts that Ryuga will be the first in line to get a fair share of the beating. Ryuga points his sword forward, calls him a bastard, and tells him not to be so arrogant, grabbing him by the head. Both start attacking each other, and Haruto knocks Ryuga to the ground, sighing, what a nuisance, and tells them to come at him one at a time. Then the system shows the location, Tokyo City, Nakano District. A crowd shouts, a dragon slayer, as Ryuga sneers, all that arrogance showing off, and now he doesn't even show up. What a waste of my time. He then adds, if he doesn't arrive in the next minute, I win by default, right? The friends comment, of course, he's an idiot for trying to go against you, Ryuga-sama, and Ryuga says he must have run home out of fear. The protagonist appears with a smile on his face, saying, my minions are probably giving him a good beating right now, and makes a grand entrance, admired by everyone. Ryuga and his friends are shocked to see him there. He asks them what they're doing acting so strange, reminding them they have a duel, and asking if Ryuga remembers. Ryuga, looking stunned, replies affirmatively. He glances around, seeing his friends lying on the ground, leaving the two of them alone for the duel, and says, all right, let's begin. Haruto looks at the referee and asks for the signal to start. The referee, surprised, agrees and announces, Class 3A student, Ryuga-sama vs Class 2F student. The referee then signals them to begin. Ryuga admits he doesn't know how Haruto managed that, but he's going to end it now. He attacks, throwing his power at Haruto and taunts him, asking if he's prepared for what's coming. Ryuga launches the Inferno Flame spell, saying he won't settle for anything less, thinking it will soon be an instant death for Haruto. Turning his gaze to Ryuga, Haruto begins to form a fireball in his hands, claiming this fireball will destroy him as he perfects his spell for a powerful strike. Blocking the opponent's powers, he attacks as well, surprising Ryuga with his counterattack. Ryuga is astonished to see him unharmed by the spell, exclaiming that it's impossible. They continue their fierce exchange. The crowd murmurs, wondering what technique Haruto is using and whether Ryuga has more magical abilities. One of Haruto's friends cheers, saying it's amazing. For a moment, Haruto himself wonders, noting he knew he wasn't the same anymore. Walking across the arena, he taunts Ryuga, asking, weren't you all in from the start? Ryuga's eyes redden, and he yells, calling him a bastard, demanding he not mess with him. Ryuga claims the fire he wields is the burning flame of a fire dragon, saying it's a close combat attack, shrouded in flames of 3,000 degrees. They clash hands, battling hand to hand, hurling insults like idiot, stupid, and bastard. Ryuga says he destroys anything he touches and vows to turn Haruto to ashes. Haruto then throws Ryuga to the ground, his hair aflame. Ryuga stares in shock, wondering how. Haruto remarks that Ryuga's flames have now faded, calling him irresponsible and a piece of trash, and asks how he plans to make up for it. Turning to Ryuga's friends, Haruto asks if they know what to do, and they affirm. He adds that the crowd is amplifying his magical power by sharing their own magic, his rule breaking so blatant that it's refreshing. He asks how much of others' power Ryuga needs. Laughing, Ryuga activates his secret technique. The whole arena is then engulfed in flames, and Haruto stares in awe at the sight of the fire dragon. Stunned, he remarks that it's the power of dozens of magic students. The dragon starts spitting fire while Haruto stands in front, simply watching. Then simultaneously, he begins to release his own power in an attempt to counter it. The dragon stares at him, questioning why the fire had no effect, and then doubles his power, sending Haruto flying. Now backed against a wall, the dragon tells him there's nowhere to run. Haruto, surrounded by fire, simply observes, noticing a distortion in the flow of time. He realizes that it's like a crack in the rhythm of the flow and thinks that if he could shatter that crack. He begins trying to break the crack with his power and manages to escape his spot, catching the dragon's attention. He then requests to use the the teddy bear once more. The bear appears and says, well, I suppose there's no other way. He picks up the bear in his hands and tilts it forward. The bear expands its power and breaks the chain, freeing the protagonist, who then flies off to face the fire dragon. Looking from above, he spots the time fracture, takes his sword, and launches it against the crack. When he reaches Ryuga, visibly shaken, doesn't understand what just happened. Muttering that it's impossible, he reflects. As long as the music plays, the magic will regenerate the giant indefinitely. So why? Why isn't it regenerating? There's no magical principle for this. While he's deep in thought, he's punched and falls to the ground. Confused, he looks at the referee, who announces him as the winner, Ikuju Haruto. Well, here we are, says the girl, beginning a speech. She starts celebrating his victory, and he blushes and thanks her. She asks him to do the honors, so he raises his glass to make a toast, and everyone joins in. She expresses relief and gratitude that the arrogant boy is leaving the school, adding that the school is private property and that he went overboard. She notes there will also be financial matters to resolve, concluding that she just needs a bit more time to have everything in her grasp. They exchange glances, and she calls him Koju-kun. He asks what he should do with the 100 million credits he's won, placing his glass on the table and admitting he completely forgot about the bet. The girls turn their attention to him, asking why and remarking it would be a waste. He says he's never been after money, and they continue eating. One of the girls asks about his relationship with Rin. Rin, startled, spits out her juice and asks her friend why the sudden question. Embarrassed, he replies that he accepted the challenge with the top-ranking student for Rin's sake. The girls smile and ask what exactly his relationship with her is. He looks at his juice glass and says, well, the girls continue staring at him, waiting, as he pauses, and then he says he needs to use the restroom. As they watch him leave, the girls, still puzzled, express disappointment he didn't answer. One of them whispers, saying she feels he's changed somehow, and asks if they feel it too. They agree, with Rin commenting that he seems so focused and mature now. Rin recalls when they were children and continues to tell her story, saying that since that day, she's felt safe and that things will always be this way. She says that they share a secret that belongs only to the two of them. In the bathroom, Haruto washes his hands, pauses to think, and checks his phone, thinking to himself how Rin's friends really went overboard with those questions. He tells himself not to overthink it, knowing it's been a while since things felt so lively. He muses that it's a shame it will never happen again, though the future might still change. A voice echoes, calling his name. It's the teddy bear. Haruto tells it to be quiet as they'll be home soon, but the bear insists, saying it's an emergency. Haruto asks what happened, and the bear replies that the moment has finally arrived. Leaning against the bathroom sink, Haruto asks for what and what the bear is talking about. The bear explains that it's time to tell him the real reason he's here, urging Haruto to listen closely. The bear adds that he, better than anyone, knows that someone who is supposed to have died is alive. Haruto looks on, baffled. He asks what the bear means, adding that Ria died a while ago in an accident. The bear tells him no, at least not in the world they're currently in. Haruto orders the bear to get ready immediately, saying they're going to save her. He shouts for Mira, and she calls out to him, saying Tada. He holds her, noting she seems to have a fever, and asks if she managed to do that on her own. She replies that she did, and that it was amazing, and she did it all by herself. He says he understands and continues observing, smiling. Smiling, she hands him a red scarf, saying she made it for him. He takes it, wondering if it will fit, and she pulls back, her eyes filling with tears, asking if he doesn't want it, mentioning how hard she worked to make it. Embarrassed, he insists that wasn't it and says of course he wants it. She smiles again and puts the scarf around his neck. Looking at him, she tells him, you better stay still and not pull it off, even if some stitches are a little loose. He looks at her, and she asks him about any news. Putting on a toy mustache, she says that it's a present from Rianta Claus, and he plays along, thanking her. She looks at him and says, who knows, maybe one day we'll celebrate a Hawaiian party when she finishes her ballet. Holding the teddy bear, he tells it that this was a promise. She smiles and asks if he's going to give it to her, calling him her big brother. He replies that in the end, he wasn't able to keep that promise. He then explains what happened to her. She had gone out with her parents and never returned home. Lost in his thoughts, he stops listening to her for a moment. She calls his name, asking if he's listening. He looks at her intently, glancing around the place they're in, and apologizes, asking her to repeat what she'd said. The bear looks at him and tells him to pull himself together, adding that he'll have to undergo a test that he cannot fail. Haruto questions what he's seeing, why he's seeing Ria, and how she could still be alive. He says that everyone on that plane had perished and that her being alive shouldn't be possible. He then asks what the bear knows about the accident, and the bear replies, all I know is that it was due to a mysterious failure during a high-altitude flight. Haruto makes a small supposition, suggesting that this mystery might go far beyond the current science of his world. Still puzzled, he listens as the bear continues, explaining that on that day, a temporary hole or spatial anomaly opened up. Confused, he looks at the bear and asks about this temporary hole or spatial anomaly. The bear confirms, explaining that it's a tear connecting their world with another dimension, and that even in the future, it's impossible to predict when such an anomaly will appear. The bear asserts that when this tear appears, it starts distorting gravity. Tragically, his family on that airplane died because of it. It would have been impossible for the plane to remain stable within that gravitational field caused by the tear, and it crashed shortly after. Haruto wonders aloud how all the passengers could have died in that accident and asks if he remembers hearing of any survivors, noting that his sister's body was never found. In other words, his sister might be trapped within some kind of temporal or spatial rift. They exchange glances and continue to observe, realizing that this might be the place they were talking about, a dimensional breach. Hey everyone, did you enjoy this story? I really liked it. If you want to follow the next part, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. See you in the next story, guys.